Hey guys, tonight we dive into a world where messages fly faster than a hawk on the Mongolian steppe. Imagine you're standing under a wide, endless sky, the wind brushing past, carrying the faint scent of horse sweat and dust. Somewhere beyond the horizon, a rider is thundering across the land, clutching a letter that might change the fate of kingdoms. You probably won't survive this ride, unless you're one of those legendary Mongol couriers. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, drop your location and local time in the comments. I'm curious if you're tuning in from a place where it's morning, afternoon, or somewhere between a late night snack and bedtime. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The Mongol Empire. Just saying those words might summon images of vast grasslands stretching endlessly under a blue sky, warriors on horseback charging like storms, and Genghis Khan, the man who stitched together the largest continuous land empire in history. But here's the twist. The empire wasn't just about conquest. It was about control, communication, and an insane level of organization that most medieval societies couldn't even dream of. You're stepping into a time around the early 13th century, when the Mongols began conquering huge chunks of Eurasia. Imagine a territory so big that it stretched from the Pacific Ocean in the east all the way to the heart of Europe in the west. The sheer scale is mind-boggling. Think of travelling across countries like Russia, China, Persia, and parts of Eastern Europe without a single passport stamp but with plenty of danger lurking at every corner. Now, picture the challenge Genghis Khan faced. How do you govern, command, and keep in touch with commanders who are days or weeks away? Traditional medieval messengers might take weeks or even months to carry important news, and by the time the message arrived, the situation on the ground could have changed completely. This wasn't just an inconvenience, it could mean the difference between victory and utter disaster. Enter the Mongol postal system known as the Yam. It was a network of relay stations and riders that worked like the empire's nervous system, sending signals faster than most armies' marching speeds, or even the fastest European couriers of the time. Think of it as the medieval equivalent of a high-speed internet cable, except it was all on horseback, dirt and sweat. Historians still argue whether the Mongol Yam was a totally original invention, or an inspired upgrade of existing steppe communication methods. What's clear, though, is how it revolutionized everything. Instead of waiting weeks for a message, the Yam system enabled dispatches to race hundreds of miles in just a few days. That's faster than you can binge-watch your favourite series, and still have time to panic about tomorrow's work email. The system was born out of necessity but turned into an empire-wide phenomenon. Genghis Khan himself understood that speed wasn't just about moving quickly, it was about survival, efficiency, and power. It's like having a fleet of motorcycles in a world still dominated by foot messengers and clunky horse riders. Here's a fun tidbit. The Mongols didn't just think about speed in human terms. They had a surprisingly detailed understanding of horses' endurance, food, and rest. The whole empire was connected by a string of Yam stations spaced roughly every 25 to 40 miles, close enough for horses to gallop hard and far enough apart that the rider could swap mounts and keep going without losing a beat. But this wasn't just a bare-bones post office. Each station was a bustling mini-hub where riders rested, fresh horses awaited, and travellers found shelter. Some even doubled as supply depots, inns, or small military posts. And for the lucky few, carrying a Pisa, a special metal tablet, meant instant VIP access through any checkpoint, like a medieval all-access pass. Historians still debate exactly how widespread and standardised these stations were, with some suggesting the system's scale changed dramatically under different Khans. However, the consistent thread is the Yam's role as the empire's lifeline, knitting together distant corners with the speed and precision of a well-oiled machine. So as you settle into this story, think about the Mongol postal system not just as a logistical marvel, but as the heartbeat of an empire that thrived on fast, reliable communication. A feat that outpaced nearly every other medieval power. It's the story of how letters, horses, and human endurance shaped history's fastest postal service. You trudge through the vast Mongol steppe, the endless grass waving like a restless sea beneath a boundless sky. The horizon stretches forever, and somewhere, hidden in this wild expanse, a Yam station awaits, the crucial link in a chain that keeps the empire alive and humming. These stations weren't just random waypoints, they were meticulously placed, each a lifeline for riders pushing messages faster than most armies could march. As you step closer, you realise the Yam is more than a postal system. It's a sprawling network of relay hubs scattered across thousands of miles, a backbone supporting one of history's fastest communication systems. Yam stations functioned like pit stops in a high-speed relay race. Picture them as a string of miniature outposts strategically placed about 25 to 40 miles apart, roughly the distance a horse could gallop at top speed without collapsing. At these stations, riders swapped exhausted horses for fresh ones, refilled supplies, and sometimes even passed on intelligence to local commanders. The whole system was designed to keep messages flowing non-stop, day and night. You probably imagine these stations as crude, dusty campsites, but some were surprisingly sophisticated. Many included stables, shelters, food stores, and even small garrisons to protect against bandits. These hubs functioned as official centres authorised by the Mongol administration, ensuring security and speed were never compromised. They weren't simply post offices, they were the veins and arteries pumping information throughout an empire the size of a continent. Interestingly, the Yam wasn't a new concept entirely. Earlier steppe cultures had used similar relay systems, but the Mongols scaled it up to unprecedented levels. Historians still argue whether the Mongols invented the Yam outright, or evolved it from predecessors. What's undeniable is the vastness and efficiency they achieved. By the mid-13th century, Yam stations dotted the empire so densely that even the most remote outposts could be reached in mere days rather than weeks or months. What's more, the Yam was open not only to official messages but sometimes to merchants, travellers and envoys who had permission, or a paisa, that special metal tablet granting priority passage. The Mongols understood that the speed of communication was as vital for governance as it was for commerce and diplomacy. These stations were often bustling hubs of activity, a far cry from the quiet, dusty relay points you might imagine. A quirky aspect of the Yam stations is their role in local economies. In many cases, the Mongols relied heavily on conquered peoples to maintain these outposts. Villagers provided horses, food and shelter, sometimes under duress, other times as a form of tax or tribute. Some locals even prospered by running the stations, becoming the unlikely caretakers of an empire's lifeline. This patchwork of cooperation and coercion was essential to keep the system running, especially in harsh terrains like deserts or mountains. Now imagine the sheer variety of landscapes these stations had to contend with. From the freezing Siberian tundra to the scorching Gobi Desert, each Yam station had to adapt to its environment. In the deserts, water was precious, and horses were carefully rationed. In the mountains, narrow passes tested both man and beast. Yet the system held strong, a testament to the Mongols' incredible logistical ingenuity. A little-known tidbit: some Yam stations doubled as small courts where local disputes were settled. This made them more than just relay points. They became centres of authority and control, reinforcing the Mongol grip on the regions they ruled. In some places, the Yam station was the only official presence of the empire for hundreds of miles, making it a symbol of power as well as practicality. Historians still debate the exact number of these stations and how standardised they were across the empire. Some argue the system was rigidly organised, with strict protocols for each station, while others suggest it was more flexible, adapting to local conditions. Either way, the impact was clear. The Yam connected the empire like a living network, faster and more reliable than most medieval communication systems. As you leave this Yam station behind, the sun setting in a blaze of orange and gold, you start to appreciate the scale and complexity of what the Mongols built. This wasn't just a courier network. It was the nervous system of an empire that spanned continents, keeping the heartbeat of distant lands synchronized with surprising speed and efficiency. You mount your horse at dawn, feeling the crisp air fill your lungs as the Mongol steppe stretches wide and endless before you. Today, you're a rider in the famed Mongol postal system, trained, tough, and ready to cover incredible distances faster than most medieval armies could march. But what really keeps you going isn't just adrenaline or the thrill of speed. It's a carefully honed combination of horse training, rider endurance, and some surprising dietary choices that fuel this relentless pace. Riders in the Yam system were no ordinary messengers. From a young age, they were trained to endure harsh conditions, navigate treacherous terrain, and push both themselves and their mounts to the limits. The Mongols valued stamina above all, knowing that the ability to ride long hours day and night was crucial. Their training was brutal but effective. Imagine waking up before dawn, riding through freezing cold or scorching heat, and swapping horses like clockwork, all while clutching vital messages that could determine the fate of the empire. The horses themselves were equally remarkable. The Mongol pony was small but incredibly tough, bred to survive the steppes' brutal winters and scorching summers. These horses weren't pampered show ponies. They grazed on sparse grass, drank little water, and could cover 60 to 70 miles a day in relay, thanks to the system's clever horse swapping. Historians still debate whether the Mongols' horse breeding techniques or their strategic use of multiple mounts were more responsible for the system's speed. Either way, these horses were the real MVPs of the Empire's communication network. Now, you might expect these riders and horses to feast on gourmet meals fit for kings to keep up their energy. But no, the Mongol diet was surprisingly simple, sometimes even quirky. Riders often ate dried meat and fermented mare's milk, known as erag, a traditional drink packed with calories and vitamins. This fermented milk was not only a powerful energy source, but also thought to help with hydration and stamina. The combination sounds odd to modern taste, but worked wonders on the open steppe. You might call it the Mongol energy drink, centuries before anyone thought of Gatorade. A lesser-known tidbit: some riders would carry special packages of horse manure or dried dung, which was not only used as fuel for fires, but also surprisingly as a primitive form of sunscreen. Applying a thin layer on the face protected against the harsh sun and biting winds. So next time you're complaining about SPF 50, remember the Mongol riders who used a much more organic approach. The riders' training didn't just focus on physical endurance, they were skilled navigators and scouts too. With no GPS or detailed maps, they relied on natural landmarks, the stars, and knowledge passed down through generations. This expertise allowed them to ride through deserts, forests and mountains without getting lost, an essential skill when every minute mattered. Historians still argue whether this navigational knowledge was formally taught or mostly learned on the job, but the results speak for themselves. What about rest, you wonder? Well, the YAM system was designed so riders rarely stopped long enough to feel tired. Fresh horses waited at every station, and the rider's role was to keep the message moving, sometimes riding for 24 hours straight. When they did rest, it was often just a quick meal and a brief sleep at the station before mounting a new steed and continuing. Sounds exhausting, definitely. But this relentless pace gave the Mongol Empire a communication speed that medieval Europe could only envy. The rigorous lifestyle also meant riders lived precarious lives. They faced threats from bandits, wild animals, and the elements. Some stories tell of riders outrunning wolves or escaping sandstorms by sheer grit and determination. These tales became legendary, part of the Mongol oral tradition, and helped inspire the next generation of couriers. It's worth noting that not all riders were Mongols. The empire was vast, and the postal system sometimes incorporated local riders familiar with specific regions. This inclusion made the system more flexible, but also led to variations in training and methods. Historians still debate how much autonomy local riders had versus strict central control. Either way, the focus remained on speed and reliability. So next time you're frustrated waiting for a text reply, imagine being one of these Mongol riders, galloping across a frozen plain or a desert, clutching your precious message as the world blurs around you. Their blend of stamina, skill, and a diet that would make modern nutritionists raise an eyebrow kept one of history's fastest postal systems racing against time. You barely catch your breath as you arrive at the next YAM station, the pounding rhythm of hooves still echoing in your ears. No time for rest. Your mission depends on speed. You dismount swiftly, and just as planned, a fresh horse is waiting, restless and ready to charge into the next leg of your journey. This is the magic of the Mongol postal system, the art of horse swapping, a seamless relay that keeps messages sprinting forward across vast and unforgiving landscapes. The genius of this system lies in its simplicity and execution. Rather than exhausting a single horse, the Mongols placed relay stations roughly 25 to 40 miles apart, perfectly calibrated to match a horse's peak endurance. When you arrive, a fresh mount is waiting, alert, eager, and well-fed. You hand off your message, leap onto the new steed, and race ahead without pause. This process repeats station after station, like a baton passed in a high-stakes race that never ends. This horse swapping wasn't just practical, it was revolutionary. Most medieval armies relied on slow-moving couriers, whose mounts grew tired after a few miles. By contrast, Mongol riders could cover upwards of 200 miles in a single day by swapping horses every hour or so. Imagine you're watching a relay marathon, but the runners are horses, and the track spans entire countries. Historians still debate whether the distances between stations were standardized across the entire empire, or varied depending on terrain and local conditions. For example, in harsh deserts, stations might be closer together to protect horses from heat exhaustion. In contrast, the expansive grasslands allowed for longer stretches, but regardless of exact spacing, the horse-swapping system was the linchpin that made the yam a speed machine. What you might not realise is that the system required an enormous supply of horses. Each station maintained dozens of fresh mounts ready to go, and these horses had to be cared for meticulously to stay healthy and fast. The logistics behind this alone were staggering. Feeding, watering and breeding enough horses to support continuous 24/7 communication over millions of square miles was a feat most medieval societies would find nearly impossible. A quirky fact: some stations reportedly used horses that had been specifically trained to recognise the sound of approaching riders. This meant fresh mounts would become agitated and ready to bolt as soon as they heard the thunder of hooves, shaving precious seconds off the handover time. It's a bit like having dogs who know when it's time for a walk, only much faster and with a lot more pressure on the line. The practice of horse swapping also influenced Mongol tactics in warfare. Quick communication allowed commanders to issue orders rapidly, coordinate movements over great distances, and respond to threats almost in real time. Some historians argue that this speed gave the Mongol armies a decisive edge over their enemies, turning battles into exercises of strategy and timing rather than brute force alone. At each station, riders not only changed horses but often exchanged critical intelligence or updated reports. You might think of these stations as mini command centres where information was filtered and passed on. This role made them targets for enemy forces, so security was tight. The Mongols maintained garrisons to protect the yam from sabotage and attack. A little-known detail: riders sometimes carried small amounts of essential supplies during horse swaps, dried meat, fermented mare's milk, or even medicinal herbs, to sustain themselves during stretches without station access. The network wasn't just about horses and messages, it was also a survival system. The paisa, a special metal tablet carried by high-ranking officials and messengers, guaranteed immediate and safe passage through all checkpoints and even hostile territories. Holding one was like flashing a backstage pass, commanding respect and cooperation from locals and soldiers alike. This device helped riders move unhindered, a critical advantage in hostile or chaotic regions. However, the system wasn't infallible. Riders faced dangers: bandits, wild animals, weather and fatigue. Some stations were miles from friendly territory, isolated and vulnerable. But the Mongols' ruthless discipline and organisation minimised these risks, ensuring messages usually got through. As you leap onto your fresh horse and gallop away from the station, you feel the raw power of the system beneath you, an ancient high-speed network fueled by horses and human grit, designed to outrun enemies and time itself. You clutch the cold metal paisa in your palm, feeling its weight, not just physical, but symbolic. This small, engraved tablet is your VIP pass, your all-access ticket through the vast Mongol Empire. With it, checkpoints fall away, gates swing open, and riders like you blaze through regions that would otherwise slow even the fastest messenger to a crawl. The paisa guarantees your safe and swift passage, a crucial tool that kept the Mongol postal system humming like a finely tuned machine. The paisa was an official badge issued by the Khans to trusted officials, envoys and riders, signifying imperial authority. It wasn't just a symbol, it commanded obedience. Local governors, soldiers and villagers knew that the bearer had the Khan's backing. Refusing to cooperate with a paisa holder wasn't just rude, it was dangerous. In some accounts, it's said the paisa could even compel food and lodging from local populations along the route, essentially giving its bearer a license to requisition supplies needed to maintain speed. You probably think such a system would be easily abused, and you're not wrong. There are stories of some holders misusing their paisas to exploit locals, leading to tensions and occasional unrest. but the system mostly worked because the Mongols balanced strict control with practical necessity. The Paysa was more than a badge. It was a lifeline for empire-wide communication. The design of the Paysa varied, often made of bronze or silver, rectangular or sometimes oval, with intricate engravings that identified the holder's rank and permissions. Each was unique to avoid forgery, which was a serious concern. After all, a fake Paysa in enemy hands could spell disaster by allowing spies to infiltrate critical areas. Here's a quirky tidbit. In some cases, Paysa holders were accompanied by guards or local escorts, especially when crossing dangerous or hostile territory. These escorts sometimes rode with riders, creating a mini convoy that combined speed with security. The balance was delicate. Too many escorts slowed progress, but too few risked ambush. The Paysa system also highlights the Mongols' pragmatic approach to governance. They didn't just conquer lands, they built an administrative web that relied on trust, authority, and the swift movement of information. The Paysa made this possible by creating a class of messengers and officials who were literally above local laws and obstacles, speeding the flow of orders from the Khan to distant generals. Historians still debate how strictly the use of Paysas was controlled and monitored. Some argue it was tightly regulated, with penalties for misuse, while others suggest it was more laissez-faire, relying on the honour system. Either way, the importance of the Paysa to the empire's communication can't be overstated. In fact, the Paysa system influenced later postal and courier practices across Asia and beyond. You could say it was the medieval version of a priority mail sticker, but with more teeth. It was both a practical tool and a psychological weapon, signalling the Mongols' reach and authority. One fascinating aspect is that the Paysa system sometimes allowed merchants and diplomats to travel faster than usual by borrowing or receiving temporary Paysas. This openness helped promote trade and diplomacy, further intertwining the Mongol postal network with the wider world economy. But the Paysa wasn't just about speed, it also provided safety. Travellers carrying one were less likely to be harassed or robbed, which was no small thing when crossing hostile or lawless lands. The Mongols understood that communication wasn't just about how fast you could move, but how safely you could deliver the message. A fun detail, some Paysas had inscriptions that were more like ancient tweets, brief messages or slogans reminding the bearer of their duties or the Khan's favour. You can almost picture riders checking their Paysas before setting off, like scanning a quick text for encouragement. So with your Paysa in hand, you ride out of the station, cutting across hills and rivers, knowing you hold a tool that turns mere travel into a race against time. It's a reminder that in the Mongol Empire, communication wasn't just a function, it was power, wrapped in bronze and engraved with the Khan's will. You press onward through the shifting landscape, the rhythm of your horse's gallop syncing with the pounding of your heart. The Mongol Empire sprawls beneath you, an enormous mosaic of diverse peoples, languages and cultures, all connected by the Yam postal system you rely on. This system didn't just deliver messages, it delivered unity. It was the empire's invisible thread, weaving disparate lands into a single entity ruled by the Great Khan. Think about it. The Mongol Empire stretched from the Pacific Ocean all the way to Eastern Europe, crossing deserts, mountains, forests and rivers. That's a vast area, roughly 1/5 of the world's landmass at the time. For such a sprawling realm to hold together, it needed more than brute force. It needed communication, and lots of it. The Yam was the network that kept governors, generals, merchants and envoys talking, trading and moving with unprecedented speed. Your journey isn't just about delivering letters. It's about delivering news of conquests, tax orders, military strategies, and diplomatic envoys. It's about making sure the Khan's will reaches the farthest corners of his domain before rebellions can spark or enemies can strike. This network helped Mongol armies coordinate complex campaigns thousands of miles apart, a feat no other medieval power could match. What's fascinating is that this communication system helped the Mongols manage an empire far larger than any previous ruler had attempted. Other empires like Rome or China had postal systems, but none matched the speed and scale of the Mongol Yam. Historians still debate whether the Mongols' communication innovations were the most important factor in their rapid conquests. Some argue their military tactics were king. Others say the Yam's speed made victory possible by keeping armies coordinated and informed. A quirky detail you might not expect. The Yam system also played a role in spreading culture and technology. News of inventions, ideas, and even cuisine travelled alongside military orders. Traders and envoys often used the Yam routes to carry not just goods but knowledge. So, in a way, the system was an ancient internet, connecting people not just through messages but through cultural exchange. At the heart of this system were the people who operated it: local administrators, station keepers, horse breeders, and of course, the riders. They were the unsung heroes who kept the Empire's lifeblood flowing. You might imagine them as tireless cogs in a massive machine, but many were also skilled negotiators, diplomats, and sometimes spies. The system's efficiency also had unintended consequences. For example, by speeding up communication and troop movement, it helped prevent widespread rebellions by crushing dissent before it could spread. But it also created a climate of constant surveillance and control, which some argue stifled local autonomy. Historians continue to debate how much the Yam contributed to the Mongols' administrative success versus the Empire's often brutal tactics. You might wonder how messages were secured in such a vast and vulnerable system. The Mongols used coded language and trusted couriers, but occasional interceptions did happen. Still, the sheer speed and reliability of the network made it hard for enemies to exploit delays. This was no simple postal service. It was a high-stakes game of intelligence and counterintelligence. Here's an intriguing tidbit. Some Yam stations doubled as early intelligence outposts. Riders brought back reports not just of political orders, but of enemy movements and local unrest. This intelligence helped the Khan make informed decisions, turning the Yam into an early warning system as well as a messenger service. You push your horse faster, feeling the wind whip past your face. Every mile covered is a victory against distance and time. The Yam doesn't just connect places, it connects people, ideas, and power. As you ride on, you carry more than a message. You carry the pulse of an empire stretching across continents, held together by a network of horses, riders, and metal tablets. The sun dips low behind jagged mountains as you press onward, the Mongol postal system humming invisibly beneath your every stride. You're not just a rider anymore, you're a living thread in a vast tapestry connecting the Empire's heartbeat. But what really keeps this system ahead of its time is how the Mongols integrated intelligence gathering directly into their postal network, turning couriers into eyes and ears scattered across the land. Unlike many medieval states that relied on slow, isolated spies or messengers, the Mongols created a real-time flow of information. Each rider wasn't just delivering a message, they were reporting on local conditions, enemy movements, weather, and more. This meant the Empire stayed one step ahead, reacting faster than foes could imagine. It's almost like having a surveillance network built on horseback, centuries before modern intelligence agencies. Historians still argue how formalised this intelligence role was. Were all riders trained spies, or just opportunistic observers? Evidence suggests some riders were specially selected for their knowledge and loyalty, carrying secret instructions and codes. Others might jot down observations on the fly, passing critical news during their relay stops. Either way, this blend of courier and spy made the Yam system a powerful tool of control and conquest. Consider the vast distances involved. You might carry a message from the imperial court in Karakorum to a border outpost near Hungary, over 3,000 miles. Along that route, every rider might witness something vital: a local uprising, a troop build-up, a strange alliance, and add that intel to the system. This flow of knowledge allowed the Mongol leadership to anticipate threats and adapt strategies quickly. A quirky detail: some riders were said to carry special spy pigeons, trained to fly messages back to stations if danger threatened. While historians debate whether this practice was widespread or more legendary, it highlights the Mongols' inventive approach to communication. Combining horseback speed with natural messengers, they pushed every available tool to its limits. This intelligence network also influenced Mongol diplomacy. Envoys carried not only treaties but secret instructions and coded messages, relying on the Yam to move safely and swiftly. The system gave Mongol negotiators a tactical edge, allowing them to respond quickly to changing alliances or threats. But this integration of espionage and communication came with risks. Riders intercepted by enemies could reveal critical information, and some couriers reportedly sacrificed themselves rather than surrender their messages. The Mongols valued loyalty and secrecy above all, sometimes punishing failures harshly. Historians debate whether this fostered a culture of fear or disciplined professionalism among Yam riders. You notice the landscape shifting now. Rolling hills give way to dense forests, the scent of pine mingling with the evening air. The terrain challenges your navigation skills, but your training keeps you steady. You recall that some yam stations were located near natural landmarks or sacred sites, which helped riders orient themselves. This blend of geography and instinct was crucial, especially before standardized maps existed. An unexpected tidbit: some stations were equipped with early warning signals, fires, smoke, or reflective surfaces to alert incoming riders of danger ahead or to coordinate movements. It's like a prehistoric traffic light system designed for the fastest horses in the world. Your thoughts drift to the people behind the scenes, the station keepers, the horse breeders, the administrators who kept this network alive. Their work was largely invisible but essential. Without their constant effort, the riders would have no fresh mounts, no shelter, no food. It was a complex web of logistics and trust. So, as the sun finally dips below the horizon and night wraps the steppe in shadows, you feel a quiet pride. You're part of something larger, a communication network that isn't just about speed or messages, but about intelligence, power, and the fragile thread holding an empire together. The Mongol postal system wasn't just fast, it was smart, adaptive, and terrifyingly effective. Night settles over the steppe like a thick velvet curtain as you guide your horse through a clearing, the stars scattered overhead like ancient watchful eyes. The cold nips at your cheeks, but you barely notice. The yam network never sleeps, and neither do you. It's strange to think that while the rest of the medieval world struggled with sluggish communication, you're riding at speeds rivaling today's postal services, powered by horses and human endurance. The Mongols built an empire on movement, and tonight you're part of that legacy. Your journey highlights one of the most remarkable aspects of the Mongol postal system: its relentless operation through all seasons and weather. Rain, snow, blistering heat, and biting cold. All these conditions couldn't stop the yam's riders from delivering messages. You might shudder imagining it, but the Mongols believed speed was life itself, even when nature was determined to slow them down. The harsh winters of the steppe, for instance, brought challenges that most medieval armies or messengers wouldn't dare face. Temperatures could drop below -30 degrees Celsius, and blizzards whipped across the plains. But Mongol riders were trained to endure these extremes. They wrapped themselves in thick felt garments, sometimes using animal fats as skin protection against the wind. Horses, too, were bred for resilience, their thick coats and tough hooves adapted to frozen ground and sparse forage. A quirky survival tactic. Riders reportedly used the warmth of their horse's breath to thaw frozen saddle straps and reins, a practical trick that's easy to overlook when you think of the system's speed and grandeur. This intimate connection between rider and horse was essential for survival. Historians still debate how continuous the system was during the worst weather. Some sources suggest that extreme conditions forced temporary slowdowns or rerouting, while others argue the Mongols prized uninterrupted communication above all else, pushing riders to extremes. Either way, the ability to maintain a working postal system through harsh climates was unparalleled. The yam's design included well-stocked stations providing shelter, food and rest for both horses and riders. These stations were vital oases where you could catch a breath, warm yourself by a fire and swap for fresh horses. In winter, the stations were fortified and stocked with extra fodder to keep horses healthy when grazing was scarce. This logistics planning was ahead of its time, highlighting the Mongols' strategic foresight. Your ride tonight reminds you that this system wasn't just about speed, but about reliability. Messages needed to arrive intact and on schedule, regardless of the weather. A delayed message could mean a missed opportunity on the battlefield or a rebellion left unchecked. The Mongols' ruthless discipline ensured that no obstacle was too great to stop the yam. Interestingly, some stations reportedly stored salted meat and dried foods designed to last through long winters, ensuring riders never went hungry, even when snow trapped them for days. The diet might not sound glamorous, salted mutton and arag, but it sustained the riders' stamina. A little-known fact is that the Mongols used special felt tents, called gyrs or yurts, at many stations, providing portable shelter that could be quickly assembled and dismantled. This innovation wasn't just about comfort. It was a mobile infrastructure that matched the Empire's nomadic routes and logistical needs. While you rest briefly by a flickering fire, you can't help but think about the resilience this system demanded, not just from you or your horse, but from an entire network of people working in harmony. It was an empire built on speed, endurance, and trust, stretching across climates and cultures. And as the cold night deepens and stars wheel overhead, you feel the weight of your mission. You're not just racing against distance, but against time and nature itself. This relentless drive kept the Mongol Empire connected and powerful, a feat few medieval societies could even imagine. You awaken just as dawn stretches pale fingers across the steppe, the air crisp with morning chill and the distant call of a hawk slicing through the quiet. The landscape feels fresh, almost sacred in this early light, but you know better. Your work is just beginning. The Mongol postal system never really rests, and neither can you if you want to keep pace with the Empire's heartbeat. Each day breaks with the promise of new messages, new orders, and new challenges. This morning ride brings into focus another critical element of the YAM, its integration with local knowledge and cooperation. The Mongols were not just horsemen racing blind across unfamiliar lands. They were pragmatic rulers who knew the value of local guides, interpreters, and station keepers. Your journey depends as much on their expertise as on your horse's speed. The empire was a patchwork of conquered peoples, each with its own customs and languages. To maintain such a vast communication network, the Mongols often co-opted local elites and administrators, leveraging their understanding of terrain, weather patterns, and local politics. This collaboration allowed the YAM to adapt to regional conditions and avoid pitfalls. Historians still debate how much autonomy these local figures retained under Mongol rule. Some argue the system was highly centralized, with orders flowing strictly from the Khan's court. Others suggest a degree of local flexibility, with regional officials managing YAM stations in ways best suited to their environments. Either way, this balance between central authority and local expertise was essential. A quirky but practical detail. In some mountainous regions, riders relied on local porters or mule caravans to cross treacherous passes that horses couldn't navigate. This hybrid approach kept the YAM functional even in the most inhospitable terrain, showing the Mongols' adaptability. You remember reading that at some stations women played a surprisingly prominent role. They managed supplies, cared for horses, and sometimes even acted as messengers themselves. This inclusion was practical. Running a station required steady hands and knowledge of the landscape, and reflects the Mongols' meritocratic tendencies. Your ride today winds through forests dense with birch and pine, the scent of damp earth mingling with pine resin. The terrain slows your pace, but you trust the route chosen by your local guide, who knows every hidden path and safe crossing. This human element in the YAM system was indispensable, a reminder that even the fastest horses couldn't replace experience. At the same time, the system's reliance on local cooperation was a potential vulnerability. Enemy forces sometimes targeted stations or tried to bribe station keepers to disrupt communications. The Mongols responded by stationing guards and enforcing harsh penalties for treason or negligence, but the tension was real. An interesting scholarly debate revolves around how much the Mongol postal system resembled a modern bureaucracy versus a flexible, decentralized network. Some historians see it as an early form of imperial administration with clear hierarchies. Others argue it was more fluid, relying on personal loyalties and local customs. As you press forward, you appreciate the YAM's role in not only moving messages but also knitting together a diverse and often fractious empire. It was a social, as well as a technological achievement, requiring trust, cooperation, and mutual dependence. This morning, as your horse steps lightly over mossy stones and tangled roots, you think about how the YAM was more than a postal system. It was the Mongol Empire's circulatory system, carrying information and life across a vast, wild world. The sun climbs higher now, casting long shadows through the trees as you push your horse onward. Every mile feels like a small victory against time and terrain, but your mind drifts to the logistics behind this incredible system. The way the Mongols managed to keep it running so smoothly that messages could travel faster than most medieval armies. This wasn't luck or mere bravado. It was a carefully engineered network built on detailed planning and ruthless efficiency. At the core of the YAM's success were the relay stations, small, often humble outposts scattered every 25 to 40 miles, the distance a horse could gallop before exhaustion set in. These stations were the arteries through which fresh horses and riders surged, each ensuring the continuity of speed. You swap your tired mount for a fresh, well-trained horse, feeling the renewed surge of energy, the crispness of the new saddle leather under your hands. It's almost like an ancient version of a pit stop in a modern race. The organisation of these stations was impressive. Each was staffed by a handful of people, horse breeders, stable hands, cooks and administrators, working round the clock. They managed a rotating stock of horses, carefully bred and trained for stamina and speed. This system of horse rotation was vital, because pushing a single horse too hard could be fatal to the message you carried. You might laugh at the image of a medieval horse hotel, but that's exactly what these stations were. There were resting spots with food and shelter, and some had even developed rudimentary medical care for both riders and animals. The Mongols understood that their male riders were only as fast as their horses were healthy. Historians still argue whether the stations were entirely standardized or varied significantly by region. Some evidence suggests the network was flexible. Stations in hostile or remote areas might have fewer resources, relying more on local support. Others claim a more uniform system was enforced to maintain consistent speeds across the empire. The Yam wasn't just about speed, it was about reliability and redundancy. If one station was compromised or damaged, alternate routes or stations could be used to keep messages flowing. This resilience was crucial in an empire constantly at war and under threat from rebels, bandits and rival kingdoms. A fun detail: some station keepers reportedly used simple but effective methods to track the rider's progress, like tallying the number of horses used or timing the intervals between arrivals. This primitive but practical oversight helped maintain the system's efficiency, ensuring no rider dawdled or lost their way. Your thoughts shift to the horses themselves, those noble beasts bred and raised specifically for this purpose. Mongol horses were small, often pony-sized, but incredibly tough and enduring. They could survive on sparse forage and withstand harsh climates, traits essential for the long, grueling rides that kept the empire connected. Interestingly, some riders carried multiple saddles or packs, ready to switch horses seamlessly at each station. This practice maximised speed, allowing the rider to continue almost without pause. The coordination required was staggering, a complex dance of timing, training and trust. While you rest briefly at a shaded station, you notice how this whole operation resembles a well-oiled machine, one powered by sweat, discipline and a relentless drive for speed. It's no wonder the Mongols could outpace their enemies, not just on the battlefield but in communication. But there's a darker side to this efficiency. The pressure to maintain such pace sometimes led to accidents, injuries and exhaustion. Riders pushed to the limit, and those who failed to deliver messages risked harsh punishment. The Mongols were unforgiving when it came to their postal system. It was a matter of empire survival. Your journey today reinforces the reality that the Yam was more than a mail system. It was a strategic instrument, a backbone of Mongol power. Every fresh horse, every swift rider, every well-stocked station played a part in a grand design that changed the medieval world. You ride as the afternoon sun casts dappled shadows through the leafy canopy above. The steady rhythm of your horse's hooves a metronome for your thoughts. The Mongol postal system's heartbeat is relentless, and you're reminded again how it transformed not just communication, but military strategy across the empire. This system wasn't merely about delivering letters, it was a key to conquest, enabling the Mongol armies to coordinate massive far-flung campaigns with precision. Before the Yam, armies moved blindly, often isolated from their leaders by days or weeks. But the Mongols shattered that mould. By using their postal network, commanders could send detailed instructions and updates across thousands of miles in mere days. Imagine generals across the steppes reading orders fresh from the Khan's lips, adjusting their plans in real time. This was a game-changer, giving the Mongols a tactical edge that few medieval forces could match. Historians still argue whether the Yam's speed alone won battles, or if it was a mix of superior strategy and communication. Some contend that without this postal backbone, the Mongols' sweeping victories would have been impossible. Others credit their cavalry tactics and psychological warfare. Either way, the Yam was an essential part of their military machine. One quirky detail is that some messages were written on metal plates, or thin wooden slips, more durable than paper, which could easily be damaged by weather or rough handling. These materials helped preserve critical commands on perilous journeys. It's like carrying your orders in medieval waterproof cases. Your ride takes you through a wide valley where you spot a group of scouts returning with reports. You exchange brief greetings, both knowing the importance of timely news. The YAM didn't just carry official correspondence, it was a network for intelligence gathering and rapid dissemination of battlefield reports. This constant flow of information made Mongol armies flexible and deadly. The speed of communication also allowed for complex coordination across multiple fronts. The Mongols were famous for launching simultaneous attacks thousands of miles apart, a feat requiring incredible logistical skill. Without the YAM, synchronizing such campaigns would have been a logistical nightmare. Interestingly, the Mongol system even influenced their enemies. Some states tried to mimic parts of the YAM, establishing faster courier routes to keep up. This imitation is a testament to the Mongols' innovative approach, though few could match the original's scale and efficiency. You think about the riders themselves, often young men chosen for endurance and loyalty. Their lives were perilous, sometimes facing hostile tribes, treacherous terrain, and the constant pressure of delivering messages intact. Theirs was a life of speed, risk, and dedication. A lighter note. Mongol riders reportedly carried small musical instruments like flutes or whistles to communicate across distances or signal their arrival. Imagine a postal service with a soundtrack of galloping hooves and distant whistles piercing the quiet steppe. The YAM's impact extended beyond the military. Merchants and diplomats also relied on it, creating a flow of goods, ideas, and culture. This network helped spread technologies like gunpowder and paper making, linking east and west in ways few empires had before. As your horse slows for a break, you realise the YAM was more than just a system. It was the empire's nervous system, transmitting power, knowledge, and fear across vast distances. It connected people in ways that shaped history, proving that speed in communication can be as decisive as speed on the battlefield. You press on, the late afternoon sun warming your back as you glide along the uneven path, the rhythmic clatter of hooves blending with the distant hum of the steppe's insects. The Mongol postal system, or YAM, is not just a series of relay stations and couriers. It's a living organism shaped by the unique culture and nomadic traditions of the Mongol people. Understanding this cultural backdrop reveals why the system was so effective and in many ways revolutionary. You might picture the Mongols as ruthless conquerors, but they were also master horsemen and astute administrators who knew the power of mobility. Their nomadic lifestyle demanded speed and flexibility. The YAM grew naturally from this way of life. It's like their entire society was geared toward movement, homes that could be packed up in minutes, herds that could be relocated swiftly, and a communication network that could keep pace with their rapid expansions. Historians still argue how much the YAM was an innovation versus an adaptation of pre-existing steppe courier traditions. Some believe the Mongols borrowed and refined systems used by earlier nomads like the Turkic tribes, while others argue that the scale and formalization of the YAM under Genghis Khan were unprecedented. Either way, the system's roots in nomadic culture gave it resilience and speed. As you ride, you remember that the Mongols prized loyalty and personal honor above all. The YAM riders were not just messengers, but symbols of imperial trust. Carrying the Khan's decree was an honor and a heavy responsibility. Failure was not tolerated. This cultural value reinforced the system's reliability. A fascinating tidbit. Many YAM riders practiced a form of mental discipline and storytelling to memorize long messages or orders. In a world without smartphones or written records accessible to everyone, oral memory was a vital skill. These riders could recall detailed instructions, much like a bard reciting epic tales. You notice the landscape shifting, grassy plains giving way to rolling hills and scattered groves. This variety of terrain demanded riders skilled not just in endurance, but in navigation and survival. Many YAM stations were located near water sources or natural landmarks, helping riders stay oriented. This practical placement was no accident. It reflected deep knowledge of the land. In some regions, the Mongols incorporated local customs and knowledge into their postal practices. For example, in Siberia and parts of Central Asia, native guides and hunters helped maintain routes through difficult forests or mountains. This blending of cultures enriched the YAM and helped maintain its vast reach. On a lighter note, Mongol riders sometimes decorated their saddles and gear with personal symbols or charms, believed to protect them on their perilous journeys. Imagine a postal service with its own folk magic where riders carried good luck talismans alongside their imperial orders. The Mongols' cultural emphasis on speed extended to their whole society. Horses were treasured from birth. Children learned to ride almost as soon as they could walk. This created a population uniquely suited to maintaining such a high-speed communication system. You recall that the Yam's influence stretched beyond Mongolia itself, affecting neighbouring cultures. Some scholars note that the system inspired later postal services in Russia, the Middle East, and even Europe. The idea that an empire's success depended on rapid communication wasn't new, but the Mongols executed it on a scale no one had seen before. As dusk approaches, you feel the pulse of the nomadic world beneath your feet, the wind, the horses, the endless horizon, and you understand that the Mongol postal system was more than just a tool of empire. It was an extension of a culture built on speed, adaptability, and trust. The sky deepens into a richer blue as twilight descends, the first stars prickling to life overhead. Your horse's breath forms faint clouds in the cooling air, and you sense the growing stillness that night will bring. But the Yam doesn't pause for sunsets or moonlight. It's a system that thrives in darkness as well as daylight, a fact that underlines its extraordinary nature. Riding through the night isn't just a challenge, it's a necessity. You likely imagine medieval travel as a daytime-only affair, with couriers pausing at dusk to sleep. But the Mongols were masters of nocturnal riding, using moonlight and stars to guide their way across vast distances. This night travel was part of what made the Yam so fast. It cut delivery times dramatically and kept the Empire's messages moving. Historians still debate how often and how far riders travelled in darkness. Some accounts describe shifts lasting through the night, while others suggest shorter nighttime legs. Either way, the Mongols' willingness to ride in the dark set them apart from many contemporary systems, which often rested until morning. A quirky tidbit: Mongol riders use simple but clever methods to navigate at night, including following animal tracks and listening for natural sounds like rivers or the rustle of wildlife. They sometimes carried small lamps or burning sticks, but these were kept low to avoid drawing unwanted attention from enemies or wild animals. Your journey tonight takes you across open grasslands shimmering under the moon's silver glow. It's eerie and beautiful, like riding through a dreamscape where time slows, and only the steady clip-clop of hooves anchors you to reality. The quiet is punctuated only by the occasional call of a night bird or the whisper of wind through tall grasses. You also consider the physical toll of night riding. Eyes strain to adjust and the cold sharpens as the world cools without the sun's warmth. Yet riders learn to cope with these conditions through practice, training, and sheer necessity. Sleep was stolen in short bursts at stations or on the move, demanding endurance and discipline. The Yam's night operation also included security measures. Some relay stations were guarded by soldiers who patrolled under the cover of darkness, ready to defend against bandits or spies. Nighttime riding was dangerous, not just because of nature, but because enemies knew the importance of these messages. Interestingly, some reports suggest that riders would sometimes race under the stars to deliver urgent battle orders or warnings. Imagine the adrenaline, the focus required, and the sheer willpower to push through exhaustion and cold. These nocturnal missions could mean the difference between victory and defeat. You recall reading about a few legendary riders whose nighttime deliveries became the stuff of folklore. Messengers who rode through storms, evaded enemy ambushes, and arrived just in time to save entire armies. Whether fact or embellished legend, these stories highlight the reverence Mongols had for their Yam couriers. A light-hearted fact: despite the seriousness of night riding, some riders reportedly carried small snacks like dried meat or nuts to keep their energy up, occasionally sharing jokes or stories around campfires during brief stops. Even in the darkest hours, camaraderie was a vital part of survival. As you settle into the rhythm of your nighttime ride, guided by constellations that seem as old as the Mongol Empire itself, you understand that the Yam's ability to function day and night made it a relentless force, a network that never truly slept, just like the empire it served. The stars fade slowly as dawn creeps back over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold. Your horse's legs tire but don't falter. The rhythm of the journey pulses in your veins, a constant reminder that the Mongol postal system never rests for long. This cycle of day and night riding, horse swapping, and swift exchanges at stations kept the Empire's messages flying, but you start to appreciate the immense human and animal effort behind this relentless pace. you start thinking about the riders themselves, their lives, their training, and their place within Mongol society. These couriers were not mere footnotes in history, but vital cogs in the machinery of empire. Often recruited young, they trained from childhood in horsemanship, endurance, and memorization. Their loyalty was as critical as their speed, and they carried the Khan's trust as fiercely as their weapons. Historians still debate the degree of social mobility within the Yam system. Some suggest that exceptional riders could rise in rank or receive honours, while others believe the role remained a humble but essential duty. Either way, the couriers formed a distinct group, respected for their unique skill set and contribution to the empire. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some riders reportedly learned to sleep on the run, taking micronaps while trotting on their horses, a skill that sounds exhausting but was necessary during long shifts. It's like an extreme version of multitasking you didn't know existed. Your ride today takes you through a patchwork of grassland and forest, the scent of pine and wildflowers sharp in the fresh morning air. You pass through a bustling yam station, alive with activity, horse handlers tending to mounts, cooks preparing simple meals, and riders swapping stories and catching breath. The station feels like a miniature village, a vital hub of movement and communication. This communal life was key to the system's sustainability. Riders and station workers depended on each other, and that interdependence created a bond that strengthened the network. The Mongols' success in building such a durable system owes much to this sense of shared purpose. An interesting scholarly debate focuses on how the Mongol postal system influenced social structures within the empire. Did it promote central control at the expense of local autonomy, or did it allow for regional adaptation and resilience? Evidence points in both directions, reflecting the empire's complex nature. You also notice the variety of horses at the station, some sleek and fast, others sturdy and sure-footed. The Mongols bred horses specifically for the Yam, selecting for traits like endurance, speed, and the ability to survive harsh climates. These horses were the unsung heroes of the empire's communication. A lighter note, riders sometimes personalize their saddles with bright colours or woven patterns, not just for pride, but to identify themselves quickly at relay points. Imagine an ancient postal service with its own fashion statement. It adds a human touch to the relentless grind. As you mount a fresh horse and prepare to continue, you realise that every rider's day was a balance of speed, endurance, and camaraderie. They were racing against time, but also relying on community, a paradox that made the Mongol postal system so effective. The Yam was more than just a message delivery system. It was a living network sustained by human skill, animal endurance, and cultural values that prized loyalty and speed above all else. The sun climbs steadily as you press on, the steady thud of your horse's hooves striking the earth in a hypnotic rhythm. The world blurs past, but your mind settles into a calm focus, absorbing the vast scope of the Mongol postal system. You realise now that this network was as much a psychological weapon as it was a logistical one, creating an invisible web of control that kept distant corners of the empire tethered tightly to the centre. The mere knowledge that the Khan's orders could arrive anywhere in days instilled a deep fear in rebellious nobles and far-flung vassals. No one was beyond the reach of the Yam, and with it, the Khan's will. It was a tool of governance as much as communication. In a way, the Yam was the empire's nervous system, transmitting commands and enforcing discipline over thousands of miles. Historians still debate the extent to which the Yam was used for espionage. Some suggest it doubled as a spy network, with couriers gathering intelligence and reporting on the loyalty of local leaders. Others argue its primary function remained rapid communication, with espionage handled separately. Regardless, the lines between messenger and spy often blurred. A quirky detail, some couriers reportedly used secret codes or symbols to protect sensitive information, a kind of Mongol-era cryptography. This shows a surprising sophistication in communication security, especially considering the era. As you approach a mountainous stretch, you notice how the Yam's reach extended into even the most challenging terrains. The Mongols engineered their system to be flexible, adapting routes and stations to geography. Some riders specialised in mountain passes, while others handled desert crossings. This division of labour ensured the system's resilience. You also think about the diverse people involved. The Mongol Empire was vast and multicultural, incorporating many ethnic groups and traditions. The Yam reflected this diversity, employing locals who knew the land and spoke different languages. This inclusivity helped the system thrive across vast regions. Your horse steps carefully on rocky paths, and you feel the weight of centuries of history beneath you. Each relay station, each rider, was a link in a chain connecting the Empire's edges to its heart. The Yam wasn't just about speed, it was about unity. A lighter side, some riders carried small tokens or gifts from one station to another, a practice that fostered goodwill and human connection amid the relentless pace. Imagine passing along a dried apricot or a carved wooden charm along with the Khan's orders. The Mongol postal system's influence stretched beyond military and political realms. It facilitated trade and cultural exchange, creating corridors for merchants, artisans, and scholars. This helped spread innovations like paper money and compass navigation, connecting east and west in ways few empires before had managed. You notice how the Yam's infrastructure foreshadowed modern postal and communication systems. The principles of relay stations, fresh mounts, and dedicated couriers echo in today's logistics and express delivery networks. As you reach the next station, you feel a mixture of exhaustion and awe. The Yam's relentless pace demands sacrifice, but it also represents a triumph of organisation and human will. It's a reminder that speed and connection are powerful tools, ones that shaped the Mongol Empire and the world beyond. You rise with the dawn light cutting through a soft morning haze, the chill in the air reminding you that the Mongol postal system was a test of endurance as much as speed. The empire sprawled across mountains, deserts, and steppes, and the Yam's couriers faced every type of terrain, weather, and obstacle imaginable. Riding through snowstorms, scorching heat, or thick forests, they were the lifeline of an empire that refused to slow down. You might imagine that such conditions would ground most medieval couriers, but the Mongols adapted brilliantly. Their horses were bred tough, their riders trained to be resourceful, and their relay stations stocked with essentials: food, fresh mounts, and shelter. This wasn't just a fast postal system, it was a mobile survival network. Historians still argue how much of the system's success was due to natural adaptation versus deliberate planning. Some believe Genghis Khan's genius lay in organising pre-existing nomadic skills into a formal network. Others highlight the strategic placement of relay stations and supply caches as evidence of sophisticated imperial planning. Here's a quirky detail. In extreme cold, some riders used animal fat as a protective balm against frostbite, slathering it on exposed skin before setting out. It's a little like medieval high-tech skincare, minus the fancy bottles. The Yam's design ensured that riders could cover up to 200 miles a day by switching horses and resting briefly at stations. That's faster than most medieval armies could move with their cumbersome supply trains. It's almost like the Mongol postal system was a Formula One race, while other armies were stuck in horse-drawn carts. You pause at a mountain pass where the air smells of pine and earth, and the silence feels thick and deep. Here, the Yam's resilience shines. Stations are stocked for harsh winters, with local guides and hunters assisting riders. The Mongols incorporated indigenous knowledge to keep routes open year-round. The variety of riders is fascinating too. While many were Mongols, some came from conquered peoples and became integral to the system, learning its secrets and passing them on. This cultural blending made the Yam both a symbol of unity and a tool for empire building. On a lighter note, some relay stations included small libraries or collections of poetry and stories for riders to read during rest. It's almost like a medieval roadside cafe, with Wi-Fi replaced by epic tales and travellers' yarns. You consider the scale of this network. It stretched over 9,000 miles from Korea to Eastern Europe. No medieval postal service came close. It was a technological marvel, even if powered by horses and human stamina. The Yam's reliability was legendary. Couriers could traverse regions where other travellers feared to tread. This reputation made the system a backbone for diplomacy, trade, and war. You sip some water from a leather pouch, feeling the cool rush refresh your tired throat. The Yam was more than just a system of communication. It was a symbol of the Mongols' relentless will to connect and control an empire that stretched beyond imagination. The sun has climbed high by the time you reach the next relay station, a humble cluster of yurts and wooden shelters nestled beside a winding river. The air is rich with the scent of fresh hay, and the soft neighs of horses greet you like old friends. This small oasis is a critical node in the vast Mongol postal network, where couriers swap horses exchange news, and rest briefly before pushing onward. You marvel at how each station functions like a well-oiled machine. There are handlers ready to groom fresh mounts, cooks preparing simple meals for riders, and scribes copying messages with practiced efficiency. The system's success depended on this finely tuned coordination, a level of organisation rare for its time. Historians still debate whether the Yam's administrative structure was highly centralised or operated more like a decentralised network with regional autonomy. Some argue the Khan's court maintained tight control, while others see the Yam as a flexible system allowing local officials to adapt based on conditions. A quirky detail: some stations kept special horses called Tuguns, known for their stamina and speed, reserved exclusively for the fastest or most urgent deliveries. These elite mounts were the equivalent of Mongol Express couriers' sports cars. The Yam didn't just carry official government messages. Merchants, envoys, and even common travellers sometimes gained permission to use the network, paying fees or offering valuable information in return. This made the Yam a hub of social and economic activity, far beyond simple postal duties. Your thoughts wander to the riders themselves. Their skill wasn't just in riding, but in navigation, endurance, and sometimes combat. You recall tales of couriers fending off bandits or enemy spies, their speed a weapon and defence. The job required nerves of steel and a profound sense of duty. Interestingly, Mongol riders used unique signals, whistles, flags, and horse markings, to communicate across distances, coordinating movements without slowing down to exchange words. Imagine sending a tweet by horse gestures and whistles. You notice how this station's design maximizes efficiency. A circular corral for quick horse swaps, storage for food and water, and shelter against harsh weather. Each element serves a purpose in maintaining the system's pace. There's a humorous story told among riders about a courier who accidentally delivered a love letter instead of military orders, causing a brief but memorable diplomatic hiccup. It's a reminder that even the fastest systems aren't immune to human error. You consider how the Yam's influence stretched far beyond Mongolia. The network inspired postal systems in Russia, China, and even Europe, where ideas of relay stations and mounted couriers slowly took hold. The Mongols showed the world that speed could reshape empires. As you mount a fresh horse, you feel the pulse of this network coursing through the landscape, a testament to human ingenuity and the drive to connect distant worlds in the blink of an eye. The afternoon light grows softer as you ride away from the bustling relay station, the path winding through gentle hills dotted with wildflowers and the distant silhouettes of grazing horses. Your legs ache slightly from the ride, but your mind races with thoughts about the logistics that made the Mongol postal system so impressively fast and reliable. The Empire's communication network was a masterpiece of organisation, but it required an astonishing level of resource management to keep running smoothly. You begin to grasp the importance of supply chains supporting the Yam. Food, water, fresh horses, and equipment had to be continuously supplied to each relay station, often located in remote, inhospitable regions. Maintaining these supplies over thousands of miles required careful planning and local cooperation. The Mongols' nomadic lifestyle, with its emphasis on self-sufficiency and mobility, played a crucial role here. Historians still debate how centralized the supply logistics were. Some argue that the Empire's core directly controlled resource flow, while others suggest that regional commanders had considerable autonomy to source provisions locally. Either way, it's clear that the Mongols were adept at balancing centralized oversight with local flexibility. An intriguing fact: some relay stations doubled as livestock farms, raising horses, sheep, and cattle to replenish supplies and provide fresh mounts. This vertical integration kept stations supplied even during long campaigns or harsh seasons. You imagine the complex choreography involved: herders, stable hands, cooks, and administrators working together to keep the system humming. Each station was like a tiny empire unto itself, a crucial node in the vast network spanning Asia and into Europe. A lighter detail: riders often joked about the yam stew, a mysterious concoction made from whatever was on hand, sometimes surprisingly tasty, other times more like a challenge to one's stomach. It's a reminder that even elite couriers weren't immune to culinary adventures. The Mongols also developed specialized equipment to support their riders and horses. Saddles were designed to reduce fatigue and distribute weight evenly, and riders carried compact, durable gear for repairs and survival. These innovations might seem simple now, but they were cutting edge in the medieval world. You think about the role of local knowledge in supply and navigation. Mongol administrators often enlisted local leaders and guides who knew the terrain intimately. This partnership between imperial power and local expertise helped the system weather regional challenges and adapt to diverse environments. Another scholarly debate revolves around the sustainability of the yam. Some scholars argue that its extensive resource demands strained local ecosystems and populations, while others suggest the nomadic culture's mobility helped mitigate environmental impact. The truth likely lies somewhere in between. As you press onward, you appreciate the massive human and animal effort that powered the yam behind the scenes. The system's success wasn't just speed, it was endurance, adaptation, and an unyielding commitment to connectivity across an empire that seemed impossibly vast. The late afternoon sun casts long shadows as you push your horse forward, the air tinged with the faint scent of smoke from distant campfires. The yam system, you realise, wasn't just about communication, it was also a crucial military asset, enabling the Mongol armies to coordinate complex manoeuvres across continents with astonishing speed. Unlike many medieval armies lumbering through hostile lands, the Mongols moved like living lightning bolts, with the yam serving as their nervous system. You picture generals sending orders and reconnaissance reports racing across thousands of miles in days, not weeks or months. This rapid communication gave the Mongols a strategic edge few could match. They could adapt quickly, reinforce vulnerable positions, and exploit enemy weaknesses with remarkable precision. The yam transformed warfare by turning time into an ally instead of an obstacle. Historians still debate how integral the yam was to the Mongols' military success. Some argue it was the Empire's secret weapon, while others caution that other factors like superior horsemanship and tactics were just as crucial. What's clear is that the yam amplified those advantages exponentially. A fascinating tidbit. Some messages were written on thin wooden slips or cloth, chosen for their lightness and durability, ensuring speed and protection during rapid transfers. This is a precursor to later innovations in military communication materials. You ride through a landscape dotted with watchtowers and small garrisons, signs of the Mongols' integrated defence network. These outposts worked hand in hand with the yam, relaying messages and maintaining security along critical routes. It was a multi-layered system designed to keep the empire connected and secure. You also consider the psychological impact on enemies who knew they could never outrun Mongol orders. The yam's presence was a constant reminder of the Khan's reach and the futility of resistance. It was as much a tool of intimidation as efficiency. A lighter note. Some riders reportedly memorized poems or jokes to lighten the monotony of long rides and maintain morale. Imagine a courier reciting a funny limerick mid-gallop, ancient multitasking at its finest. The yam's military role extended beyond battle orders. It carried diplomatic letters, peace treaties, and demands, functioning as the empire's diplomatic backbone. Its speed allowed the Mongols to negotiate and intimidate simultaneously, mastering the art of rapid statecraft. You recall stories of famous messengers whose bravery and skill in delivering critical intelligence turned the tide of battles. Their legend lives on as symbols of loyalty and speed, inspiring generations of couriers to come. As the sun dips lower, you understand that the yam's military function was not just about messages. It was about power, control, and the ability to project force across the largest contiguous empire in history. It was a tool that changed how wars were fought and empires governed. The evening air cools as you settle into a gentle trot, the landscape around you now softened by twilight's mellow glow. You reflect on the human element behind the Mongol postal system, the couriers who risked everything to keep the empire's heart beating. These riders weren't just fast, they were incredibly tough, trained to endure pain, hunger and loneliness as they sped across the vast wilderness. Imagine riding for days with only a few moments to rest, the relentless wind biting at your face, your muscles aching but your mind focused. The mental discipline required was staggering. Riders memorized complex routes, identified natural landmarks, and navigated by stars when visibility was poor. Their bond with their horses was almost symbiotic, each trusting the other to survive the journey. Historians still debate whether these riders were considered elite warriors or simply dedicated messengers. Some accounts elevate them to near mythical status, while others treat them as ordinary soldiers with a specialized role. Either way, their place in Mongol society was unique and respected. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some couriers carried small bundles of fermented mare's milk, or erag, a traditional Mongol energy drink to stave off fatigue. It's the medieval equivalent of a power smoothie, only with a bit more tang. Your thoughts drift to the communal aspect of the Yam network. Riders often travelled in groups or pairs, sharing stories and supporting each other through grueling stretches. This camaraderie helped stave off the isolation that could easily overwhelm a lone rider. It also created a culture of trust and loyalty that kept the system cohesive. You pass a small herd of wild horses grazing quietly in the fading light, a reminder of the nomadic roots that shaped Mongol horsemanship. These animals were descendants of the tough breeds that fueled the Empire's mobility, and their survival mirrored the endurance of the postal system itself. An amusing story circulates about a courier who, exhausted and lost, mistook a herd of sheep for horses and attempted to mount one, much to the confusion of local shepherds. Even the best riders could have their off days. The Yam riders' skills extended beyond riding. Many were trained in basic medicine, able to treat wounds and illnesses on the road. They carried herbs and simple tools, prepared to handle the hazards of long-distance travel. This blend of physical and practical knowledge made them invaluable. Another fascinating scholarly debate concerns the riders' social backgrounds. Were they drawn mainly from noble families or the general population? Evidence suggests a mix, with merit and skill often outweighing birthright and selection, a meritocracy of speed and endurance. As night falls, you imagine the riders gathering at a station, sharing a warm meal and stories by firelight, their faces glowing with exhaustion and determination. The Yam was more than a system. It was a way of life, built on the grit and spirit of these incredible couriers. The night sky deepens, peppered with stars, as your horse carries you steadily through quiet plains, where the only sound is the steady clip-clop of hooves. In this tranquil moment, your thoughts turn to the communication itself, the messages carried by the Yam couriers, and how vital the content was to the Mongol Empire's rapid expansion and control. It wasn't just the speed that mattered, but what was conveyed. Orders, intelligence, alliances, and warnings that shaped history. Imagine receiving a letter in the middle of a battlefield, instructions from the Khan to shift forces or negotiate peace, delivered within days across continents. The ability to relay such information changed the dynamics of diplomacy and war forever. This wasn't just a postal service, it was an early form of real-time strategic command. Historians still debate the literacy levels of the couriers themselves. Some suggest riders were often illiterate and relied on oral transmission, or scribes at relay stations, while others argue that many were literate and highly educated, capable of reading and copying complex orders. The truth might vary across regions and over time. A quirky detail: some messages included secret seals made from pressed clay or wax, ensuring authenticity and preventing forgery. It's like the medieval equivalent of a tamper-proof envelope or digital signature. The language diversity within the empire posed a unique challenge. The Mongol administration used multiple languages: Mongolian, Uyghur script, Persian, and Chinese among them, to craft official correspondence. Translators played a crucial role in ensuring messages were understood and accurately conveyed. This multilingual aspect was an early example of international communication networks. You think about the messenger's mental agility, switching between languages and codes on the fly, decoding secret instructions while navigating treacherous terrain. It was a demanding cognitive feat, one that modern couriers and diplomats can relate to. A lighter anecdote: some couriers carried small, personalised charms or talismans, tokens believed to bring luck and safe passage. These objects varied from carved bone to colourful beads, giving a glimpse into the human side of the Yam. The Mongols also developed a system of standardised message formats, with specific phrases and structures to convey urgency and importance. This early form of communication protocol helped prevent misunderstandings and ensured the right tone was maintained across cultures and contexts. You pass a stream reflecting the moonlight, thinking about how information flowed in waves through the empire. News of victories, defeats, or political intrigues travelled swiftly, sometimes even reaching places before the physical presence of Mongol armies. This created a network of anticipation and reaction that was unprecedented. The Yam's role in preserving and transmitting cultural knowledge is often overlooked. Some messages carried scholarly works, poetry, or religious texts, fostering intellectual exchange. This shows the system was about more than politics and war. It was a bridge connecting diverse peoples and ideas. As you ride on, the complexity of the Mongol postal system reveals itself, not just in speed and logistics, but in its nuanced role as a carrier of power, culture, and human connection across a sprawling empire. The cool night air brushes past your face as you settle into a steady rhythm, the hooves beating a steady cadence on the dirt path beneath you. The Mongol postal system, or YAM, wasn't just an imperial tool, it was also a catalyst for commerce, knitting together markets and merchants from the bustling cities of China to the remote caravanserais of Eastern Europe. You can almost hear the chatter of traders and the clink of coins exchanging hands, all made possible by the speed and reliability of this network. Imagine the thrill of a merchant receiving news of shifting markets or new trade opportunities within days rather than months. The YAM's rapid communication allowed for swift adjustments to supply and demand, making the Mongol Empire a vibrant commercial hub rather than just a sprawling military conquest. Historians still argue how much the YAM directly influenced trade routes versus traditional caravan networks. Some believe the postal system primarily served government and military needs, while others emphasize its significant role in accelerating economic activity. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some stations doubled as informal marketplaces where local goods could be traded or bartered by passing riders and merchants. It's like medieval pop-up shops scattered across the empire. The empire's vastness meant that commodities from vastly different regions, silks from China, furs from Siberia, spices from Persia, could flow more freely thanks to the YAM. This network was the connective tissue of the early Silk Road revival under Mongol rule. You consider the diverse people using the YAM, not just Mongol nobles or soldiers, but merchants, diplomats, scholars, and even artisans. Each had a stake in keeping the system running smoothly. Interestingly, some relay stations specialized in certain goods or crafts, acting as regional hubs for both communication and commerce. This specialization made the network even more efficient and economically vibrant. You chuckle imagining a rider arriving with a sack full of silk scarves or exotic spices, swapping news and goods before racing on. The YAM was part highway, part marketplace, and part information superhighway rolled into one. One funny story speaks of a courier who, in a hurry, accidentally swapped parcels and ended up delivering a shipment of cheese to a general's camp and military orders to a cheese merchant's stall. Needless to say, the general was a bit puzzled by the pungent package. The YAM also helped spread innovations like new farming techniques, metalworking skills and artistic styles, connecting far-flung cultures in ways previously impossible. This cultural diffusion enriched the empire and beyond. You reflect on the symbiotic relationship between commerce and communication. The faster information moved, the quicker goods could be transported and markets could respond. The Mongol postal system was truly ahead of its time, laying groundwork for the globalized trade networks we take for granted today. As your horse slows near a quiet river crossing, you marvel at how the YAM wasn't just the empire's postal service. It was the beating heart of an interconnected economic and cultural web stretching across continents. The soft murmur of the river blends with the rustling of leaves as you follow the winding path, moonlight shimmering on the water's surface. This section of your journey reminds you how the Mongol postal system depended heavily on its ability to adapt to diverse terrains. From vast steppes to mountain passes and dense forests, the YAM had to be flexible and innovative to maintain its legendary speed. You picture riders navigating slippery slopes, crossing rickety wooden bridges, and forging shallow rivers, all while racing against time. The Mongols employed a range of ingenious techniques and local knowledge to overcome these challenges, ensuring that no natural obstacle could halt their messages. Historians still debate the extent to which the Mongols developed specialized infrastructure, such as bridges, paved roads, or way stations, versus relying on existing routes and local resources. Some argue that the empire's success lay more in mobility and adaptability than in physical infrastructure. One quirky fact is that in some mountainous areas, the Mongols used specially trained mountain horses that were sure-footed and resilient. These breeds were smaller but incredibly agile, perfectly suited to harsh terrain where regular horses might stumble or falter. You consider how the network's design reflected an intimate understanding of geography and climate. For example, relay stations in cold regions stocked extra firewood and winter fodder, while desert outposts prioritised water reserves. This environmental savvy helped maintain operations year-round. An amusing anecdote involves riders who, when faced with flooded passes, sometimes floated across rivers on makeshift rafts, or even tied horses together to form a floating bridge. Not exactly your typical postal service delivery method, but hey, when you have to, you have to. You also think about how the Yam leveraged natural landmarks for navigation. Riders used mountain peaks, river bends, and even star constellations to find their way, a system honed over generations. This mix of natural and man-made guidance created a resilient network. The Mongols' tolerance for local customs and expertise was key here. They didn't impose a rigid system, but incorporated indigenous methods, borrowing engineering techniques from conquered peoples and adapting them to their needs. Interestingly, some relay stations were built near hot springs, offering riders a chance to rest and heal their weary muscles in soothing waters before continuing their journey. A spa day in medieval Mongolia? Who knew? Another debate among scholars revolves around the degree to which the Mongol postal system influenced subsequent road-building projects in Eurasia. Did their innovations spark a broader transformation in infrastructure, or were they a unique, context-specific phenomenon? As you cross a shallow stream and feel the cool splash of water on your boots, you realise that the Yam's mastery over diverse landscapes wasn't just a feat of engineering. It was a testament to the Mongols' respect for and understanding of the world they ruled. The sky starts to pale with the first hint of dawn as you continue your ride, the cool morning air filling your lungs with a refreshing crispness. You think about the human stories behind the Mongol postal system, the countless lives woven into the fabric of the Yam, from riders to stable hands, cooks to scribes. This massive operation was as much about people as it was about horses or roads. Imagine the community that thrived around each relay station. A small, bustling hub of activity where messengers exchanged news, horses were swapped out, and fresh supplies were prepared. Life here was rhythmically tied to the pulse of the Yam, with routines choreographed to keep the system efficient and uninterrupted. Historians still argue over how these relay stations were staffed and governed. Some suggest they were run by military personnel, while others propose civilian administrators, and locals manage the day-to-day operations. It's likely a mix depending on location and strategic importance. A quirky detail: in some stations, messengers and locals held informal competitions, testing horsemanship skills or storytelling prowess during downtime. These gatherings built camaraderie and relieved the monotony of constant travel. You picture families living at relay stations, their lives revolving around the coming and going of riders. Children would grow up knowing the importance of the Yam, dreaming of one day becoming couriers themselves. It was a unique lifestyle, blending elements of nomadism with a semi-permanent base. The stations were also vital cultural crossroads where people of diverse ethnicities, languages and traditions intersected. This made the Yam not just a communication system, but a melting pot that fostered exchange and understanding across the empire's vast expanse. You recall a lighter story about a relay station cook who improvised meals using unusual local ingredients, sometimes creating surprisingly delicious dishes, and other times provoking a humorous culinary disaster. Food was a serious matter on the road, and every station had its specialties. The Mongols placed a high value on discipline and order at these posts. Riders were expected to adhere strictly to schedules and protocols, with severe penalties for delays or mistakes. Yet there was also room for ingenuity and adaptability when unexpected challenges arose. Some relay stations doubled as waypoints for travellers and diplomats not involved in the Yam system, offering shelter and protection along dangerous routes. This dual role increased their importance and integrated the postal network into broader travel and communication networks. Another scholarly debate focuses on how relay stations influence local economies and social structures. Did their presence boost development or impose burdens? Evidence suggests both effects occurred, depending on the region. As dawn breaks fully and the world awakens, you feel the pulse of this human network, the lives intertwined by a shared mission, to keep the empire connected, one galloping horse and one urgent message at a time. The sun climbs higher, casting a warm golden light over the rolling hills as your horse picks up pace, muscles humming with energy. You start to ponder how the Mongol postal system's efficiency wasn't just a product of fast horses and clever logistics, but also depended heavily on a complex system of laws and regulations governing every aspect of the YAM's operation. Imagine a sprawling network managed not only by physical infrastructure but by strict rules designed to prevent corruption, ensure rider loyalty, and maintain the quality and speed of message delivery. The Mongols, known for their ruthless discipline, applied this principle meticulously to their postal system. Historians still debate the exact nature of these laws, as the surviving records are sparse and often second-hand. Some claim the YAM operated under the Yasa, the secret Mongol legal code attributed to Genghis Khan, while others suggest a more pragmatic, evolving set of rules adapted over time. A quirky tidbit is that riders caught delaying messages, stealing goods, or abusing their positions faced severe punishments, sometimes even death. The Mongol leadership viewed the postal system as too vital to risk any breach of trust. You imagine the system's checkpoints doubling as courts or tribunals where accusations were swiftly investigated and justice dispensed on the spot. This no-nonsense approach maintained the YAM's integrity, but also added a tense edge to the riders' lives. The YAM's legal framework extended to the treatment of horses as well. Horses were the backbone of the system, and mistreatment was severely frowned upon. Riders had to ensure their mounts were well cared for and ready for the next leg of the journey. This leads you to consider the importance of animal welfare laws within the empire, an area surprisingly progressive for its time, given the Mongols' deep reliance on horses. Some stations even kept veterinary specialists to tend to the animals' needs. You recall a lighter story about a rider who was reprimanded for trying to sneak extra goods onto his horse, slowing him down and risking the message's timeliness. It seems even in the 13th century, overpacking was a problem. The Mongol postal system also had regulations about who could access it. Priority was given to official messages from the Khan and his generals, with civilians sometimes requiring special permission or paying fees for their mail to be carried. Interestingly, these rules created a clear hierarchy within the system, reinforcing social order and control. Yet, the YAM remained surprisingly inclusive, allowing for some level of public use, a kind of medieval express mail. Another scholarly debate centres on how these regulations impacted the system's flexibility. Some argue that strict rules might have slowed innovation, while others believe they were essential for maintaining reliability. As your horse trots toward a distant relay station, you realise the Mongol postal system was as much a legal and social construct as a physical network, governed by laws designed to keep the wheels of empire turning smoothly and swiftly. The afternoon sun warms your back as you ride through a patchwork of fields and forests, the hum of insects and birdsong filling the air. Your mind drifts to how the Mongol postal system influenced later communication and transportation networks, casting a long shadow over history. It's remarkable how this 13th century innovation laid the groundwork for systems we now take for granted. You can almost see the threads connecting the YAM to the European postal services that emerged centuries later, the courier routes of the Ottoman Empire, and even the modern express delivery companies racing across the globe today. The Mongol model was an early blueprint for fast, organised communication across vast territories. Historians still debate how directly the Mongol postal system influenced these later developments. Some argue the knowledge spread through conquered peoples and traders, while others believe these systems evolved independently. The truth probably lies somewhere in between. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some European travellers who journeyed through Mongol lands brought back stories of the YAM that sounded almost mythical. Riders who covered hundreds of miles in a day, relay stations like bustling inns, and messages delivered faster than a galloping horse could seem possible. You think about the technological and organisational lessons modern systems borrowed. Relay stations, scheduled rest stops, standardised routes, all staples of today's logistics companies. It's like the Mongols invented the medieval version of FedEx, complete with tracking, if you squint hard enough. The Mongol postal system also inspired military communication methods long after the empire faded, emphasising speed and accuracy to coordinate sprawling armies. Some military historians credit the YAM with setting a precedent for modern battlefield communication strategies. You picture a 21st century logistics manager studying the YAM's efficiency and marvelling at how much was achieved with horses, human endurance, and simple infrastructure, no drones or satellites required. Another fascinating scholarly debate centres on whether the Mongol system was unique, or if similar networks existed independently elsewhere. but were overshadowed by the Mongols' scale and documentation. An amusing story from medieval Europe tells of envoys who tried to mimic the yam's speed using relay horses, only to find their efforts hampered by less organised networks and jealous local officials. It's the classic monkey see, monkey can't scenario. You reflect on how the Mongol postal system's influence extends beyond logistics into cultural memory, inspiring literature, legends, and even modern fiction, depicting swift couriers who traverse vast empires with secret messages. As the sun dips low, painting the sky in fiery hues, you feel the enduring echo of this extraordinary system, an invention born of necessity, ingenuity, and relentless human spirit that shaped how the world communicates. The golden light fades into dusk, and you find yourself navigating narrow trails lined with tall grasses whispering in the breeze. The Mongol postal system, with all its speed and precision, was more than a military tool. It was also a vital instrument of empire building and control. The very act of sending a message was a statement of power, a demonstration that even the farthest corners of the empire were within reach of the Khan's will. Imagine the psychological impact of the yam on the peoples under Mongol rule. Knowing that news, orders, or demands could arrive in a matter of days must have been both reassuring and intimidating. It communicated that the empire was everywhere at once, an invisible force that tightened its grip with each message delivered. Historians still argue over how much the postal system contributed to the empire's cohesion versus military conquest alone. Some argue the yam was essential in creating a sense of unity, while others emphasize brute force and fear. A quirky fact: the yam sometimes carried not just official messages but also propaganda, carefully crafted letters meant to persuade local leaders to submit peacefully or discourage rebellion. This makes the postal system an early example of psychological warfare. You think about the enormous trust placed in the couriers. They were the empire's lifeline and ambassadors, bearing messages that could change destinies. Their reputation for reliability and speed reinforced the Mongols' image as a well-ordered and unstoppable force. In some regions, the yam helped integrate diverse cultures by spreading laws, customs, and administrative practices. This cultural diffusion helped shape the hybrid societies that emerged under Mongol rule, blending Mongol and local traditions. You chuckle recalling a story about a courier who, while delivering a message of peace, accidentally sparked a local festival because villagers mistook the arrival as a sign of celebration. The intersection of communication and culture is rarely straightforward. The yam also played a role in tax collection and legal administration, with messengers carrying decrees about levies or court rulings. This helped enforce the empire's authority in distant provinces. Another scholarly debate revolves around the degree to which the Mongol postal system contributed to the empire's eventual fragmentation. Did rapid communication make central control easier, or did it expose fault lines by spreading dissent more quickly? You consider the legacy of the yam as a tool of governance, a network that both united and controlled, delivering messages that carried the weight of imperial power across vast, diverse lands. As dusk settles into night, and fireflies begin their silent dance, you sense the quiet power behind every message sent and received. A reminder that communication is at the heart of empire. Night cloaks the landscape in deep shadows as you ride beneath a sky glittering with stars. The Mongol postal system wasn't just about speed or control. It was also a marvel of organisation and innovation, blending the best practices from the many cultures that the empire encompassed. The yam stands as a testament to how knowledge travels alongside conquest, evolving and adapting through cultural exchange. Think about the diversity of peoples involved in building and maintaining this system, from the steppe nomads skilled in horsemanship to Persian administrators expert in bureaucracy and Chinese engineers known for infrastructure. Their combined expertise created a unique hybrid network. Historians still debate how much the Mongols themselves innovated versus borrowed from the advanced postal systems of previous empires like the Chinese Tang dynasty or the Persian Achaemenids. It's likely they were brilliant synthesizers rather than pure inventors. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some relay stations employed multilingual scribes who could translate messages across dozens of languages, ensuring that orders from the Khan's court were understood far and wide. This linguistic diversity was both a challenge and an asset. You imagine the hustle and bustle of a relay station, a crossroads of cultures where languages mingled like the clatter of hooves. and scribes frantically copied documents to keep the flow uninterrupted. The Mongols were known for their pragmatism. They didn't impose their language or customs forcefully, but rather embraced useful elements from the cultures they ruled. This pragmatic inclusiveness helped the postal system flourish. You chuckle recalling a tale of a scribe who accidentally mixed up translations, turning a stern military order into a polite invitation to a feast. It's a reminder that even in the most efficient systems, human error and humour find a way. The Yam's success also hinged on adopting innovations such as mounted couriers, carrying official passports called paisas, granting them access to resources and protection, a precursor to diplomatic immunity. Some scholars debate whether the Mongol postal system influenced the later development of passports and diplomatic protocols in Eurasia, underscoring its broader impact beyond mere logistics. As your horse slows, you reflect on how the postal system was a living example of cultural synthesis, a network shaped by conquest, but sustained by collaboration and mutual respect. The night deepens, and the stars above seem to trace invisible lines connecting distant lands, much like the Yam's roots knitting the empire together across mountains, deserts, and steppes. The chill of the night wraps around you like a soft blanket as you ride on, the faint glow of a distant campfire flickering ahead. You start to reflect on the enormous human endurance behind the Mongol postal system, the riders themselves who braved brutal weather, hostile lands, and sheer exhaustion to keep messages flowing. This wasn't just a job. It was a lifestyle defined by speed, stamina, and sometimes sheer stubbornness. Imagine riding through freezing blizzards, scorching deserts, or dense forests, often alone or in small groups, with nothing but the road and a burning sense of duty. These couriers were the unsung heroes of the empire, each one carrying the weight of distant hopes and commands. Historians still debate the extent to which riders operated solo or in small relay teams, and how they managed sleep, food, and rest on such demanding routes. Some accounts speak of riders pushing beyond human limits, while others describe more regulated shifts to maintain stamina. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some riders carried dried mare's milk or fermented beverages to sustain their energy, a medieval energy drink, if you will. Though probably less tasty than your favourite sports drink, it was effective for those long rides. You picture the constant cycle of horse swaps, where a fresh mount waited impatiently at each relay station, ready to gallop into the next leg of the journey. Horses and riders had to work in perfect harmony, a well-oiled machine forged by trust and experience. The Mongols also trained their riders in survival skills, finding water, navigating by stars, and handling injuries in the wilderness. This made them not just couriers, but elite adventurers of their time. You can't help but smile thinking about the odd camaraderie among riders, sharing tales of close calls with bandits, wild animals, or even pranksters at way stations who tried to test their speed. The postal system's reliance on human and equine endurance raises fascinating questions in historical debates. Were these riders superhuman exceptions, or did the Mongol system institutionalize this stamina through training and strict discipline? Some accounts even hint at riders sleeping very little, catnapping for minutes at a time to maximize riding hours. This extreme endurance remains a subject of amazement and skepticism. As the firelight flickers and the night deepens, you honor the sheer grit and determination behind every message delivered, a reminder that behind the Empire's grand machinery were individuals pushing the boundaries of what was possible. The first pale hints of dawn stretch across the horizon as you finally slow to a gentle trot, the air filled with the soft chorus of waking birds. Your journey through the Mongol postal system's legacy draws to a close, and it's impossible not to marvel at how this sprawling, intricate network changed the world in subtle but profound ways. This system wasn't just about getting messages from point A to B. It was about connecting peoples, cultures, and ideas across continents, forging a shared history that still echoes today. You imagine the final couriers of the Empire riding through the morning mist, carrying orders that would shape the fate of kingdoms and the lives of millions. The Yam was their lifeblood, a ceaseless river of communication that flowed faster than most armies, crossing deserts, mountains, and endless steppes. Historians continue to debate whether the Mongol postal system was truly unmatched in its time, or if similar networks elsewhere have been overshadowed by the Mongols' sheer scale and record-keeping. Either way, it remains one of history's most fascinating examples of logistical mastery. A quirky detail to close on, the Mongols' use of the Pisa, metal tablets that functioned like passports, was so effective that some rogue riders forged them to gain access to resources, leading to crackdowns and tighter controls. Even medieval systems had to deal with fraud and bureaucracy. You think back on the system's many layers, its speed, adaptability, human endurance, legal frameworks, cultural synthesis, and political power. Each piece worked in harmony, creating a mechanism that was as much a symbol of Mongol dominance as it was a practical tool. The postal system also carried stories of hope, rebellion, diplomacy, and everyday life, making it a vibrant thread in the empire's tapestry. It connected distant tribes, merchants, scholars, and rulers, fostering a sense of unity in an era of incredible diversity. As you breathe in the cool morning air, you feel a calm sense of closure, a deep appreciation for how communication shaped civilization, and how, long ago, a determined people harnessed horses, roads, and human spirit to shrink the vast world. Now, as the day begins anew, you're left with a quiet thought. In every message sent across those endless plains, there was a promise that no matter how far you roam, you can always find your way home. The vast network of the Mongol postal system, with all its galloping horses and urgent messages, slowly fades into the quiet memories of history. It's a reminder that even in the fastest, most driven moments of our past, there was care, connection, and a human heartbeat beneath it all. As the sun rises, painting the world in gentle light, you can let yourself rest, knowing the road ahead is always open, and messages of hope and understanding will continue to travel through time. So, breathe deeply, feel the calm wash over you, and drift softly into dreams where the world is smaller, the connections closer, and the journey never truly ends.